Imagine a place where the sun always seemed to shine a little brighter, where the air smelled of sea salt and coconut suntan oil, and where the future felt like it was being written right in front of you. Welcome to California in the 1970s. It was the ultimate American dream. While the rest of the country was wrestling with a recession and gray skies, the Golden State felt like a different planet entirely. It was the era of the California girl, the birth of the blockbuster movie, and a time when you could still buy a house with an ocean view without being a millionaire. But it wasn't just about sunshine and surfboards. From the tech revolution brewing in garages to the gas lines that stretched for blocks, California in the 70s was a wild, complicated, and beautiful ride. So, buckle up. We're taking a trip back to the West Coast's most iconic decade. Let's talk numbers, because this is where things get really painful for modern viewers. In 1970, the average cost of a home in California was around $24,000. Even in booming Los Angeles, you could find a nice 3-bedroom house for under 30 grand. Rent? You could snag a decent apartment in San Francisco or San Diego for about $150 a month. And then there were the cars. The freeways were dominated by massive American steel, Ford Mustangs, Chevy Impalas, and station wagons with wood paneling. And fueling them didn't break the bank, at least not at first. In the early 70s, gas was roughly 36 cents a gallon. It was an economy where a single income could often support a family of 4, buying a home, 2 cars, and a yearly vacation to Disneyland. It was affordable, accessible, and it lured people west by the millions. If you were hungry in the 1970s California, eating out was an event. We didn't have the fast food monotony of today. We had local legends. For families, Friday night meant piling into the station wagon and heading to Bob's Big Boy. You didn't just go for the double-decker burger, you went to see and be seen. In Los Angeles, the drive-ins were still the place to show off your car while grabbing a shake. And if you wanted chicken, you went to Pioneer Chicken. The bright orange and yellow sign was a beacon of hope, and locals swear that the crunch of that batter has never been replicated since. But the 70s were also the era of the atmosphere restaurant. Places like the Velvet Turtle or Steak and Ale redefined affordable luxury. You walked into dim, moody dining rooms filled with dark wood, stained glass lamps, and red leather booths. And the center of it all was the glorious, all-you-can-eat salad bar. An endless spread of iceberg lettuce, 3-bean salad, and ranch dressing that made you feel like royalty for under $5. Culturally, California was the center of the universe. The hippie movement of the 60s was fading, replaced by a harder, faster, and more glamorous vibe. In Venice Beach and Santa Monica, a drought in the mid-70s emptied the backyard swimming pools. But instead of complaining, kids broke in with urethane wheels and invented modern skateboarding. The Dogtown era changed youth culture forever. Meanwhile, Hollywood was undergoing its own revolution. The new Hollywood era brought us gritty, realistic films, until 1977 changed everything. When George Lucas released Star Wars, lines wrapped around Mann's Chinese theater for weeks. The modern summer blockbuster was born right here on the pavement of Hollywood Boulevard. And the music? It was everywhere. From the Eagles defining the California sound in Laurel Canyon to the explosion of disco in the clubs of West Hollywood. If you were young in the 70s, California was the only place you wanted to be. But the real center of social life wasn't school or home. It was the mall. And in 1970s California, malls were practically their own sovereign nations. We're talking about the golden era of the Glendale Galleria, the Sherman Oaks Galleria, and South Coast Plaza. The aesthetic was unmistakable. Massive skylights, fountains that smelled of chlorine and pennies, and floor tiles in 50 shades of brown and orange. You went to Miller's Outpost or The Gap, when it still sold only jeans and records, to get your look right. Then you headed to the Holy Grail, the record store. Whether it was Tower Records on the Sunset Strip or a Sam Goody at the local mall, you spent hours flipping through vinyl, admiring the album art of Led Zeppelin or Fleetwood Mac. And the smells were distinct. The scent of hot pretzels mixed with the sugary fog drifting out of Orange Julius. You could spend 6 hours there with $5 in your pocket, playing Pong at the Aladdin's Castle arcade, and just existing in the air conditioning. It was the original social network. When the weekend hit, Californians didn't stay inside. The car culture extended to our entertainment, too. The drive-in theater was still king. You'd pack blankets and smuggle in snacks to the Van Nuys Drive-In or the Orange Drive-In. The sound came through a clunky metal speaker you hung on your window, which never really worked perfectly, but that didn't matter. It was about the freedom of watching Jaws or Smokey and the Bandit under the stars. And for the ultimate escape, there was the Magic Kingdom. But Disneyland in the 70s was a different beast. It was surprisingly affordable. Entry was around $5 to $7. But the real currency was the ticket book. You guarded those e-tickets with your life, because those were your pass to the Matterhorn, the submarine voyage, or the brand new Space Mountain that opened in '77. There were no fast passes and no apps, just paper tickets, long lines, and the genuine magic of a park that felt like it belonged to the locals. But down in the Santa Clara Valley, something quieter but more powerful was happening. In Sleepy Orchard, south of San Francisco, engineers were tinkering in garages. Companies like Atari and Apple were just getting started. This wasn't Silicon Valley yet. It was just a place where nerds were building the future. However, we can't look at the 70s through purely rose-colored glasses. It wasn't all perfect. The 1973 oil crisis hit California hard. Those massive muscle cars were suddenly useless as gas shortages forced people to wait in lines for hours just to get a few gallons. License plates ending in odd or even numbers dictated which days you could buy fuel. And then there was the smog. In Los Angeles, the smog was often so thick you couldn't see the mountains. There were smog alert days where kids weren't allowed to play outside at recess because the air was simply too dangerous to breathe. By the end of the decade, things were changing. Prices started to climb, the freeways got more crowded, and the carefree innocence of the early 70s began to fade into the high-powered corporate energy of the 80s. But for those who lived through it, California in the 1970s remains a golden memory, a specific moment in time where the West was still wild enough to be free, but modern enough to be comfortable.